To do the efforts we were making were to try to make that area safer for people, for pedestrians, for vehicles, and also to just improve the aesthetics of the area, to make it look nicer, to give a better appearance, to clean it up a bit. And we've certainly been looking at other opportunities to continue that work, and we have an opportunity now to really do a rehabilitation of Central Street. Which is a major area, a major street that flows to our downtown, brings tens of thousands of people every day into Peabody Square, and certainly, as you know, very heavily traveled area, but in great need of repair. So that would be the next area to tackle, I think, in terms of our overall plan to improve our downtown area, and certainly with the same goals in mind, to improve the safety in that area. There's some very difficult intersections, some turns in that Ward 3 neighborhood, Wilson Square, Tremont Street, Warren Street, down to Walnut Street. All of those areas can be dangerous spots. There's been a number of motor vehicle accidents in those areas, and I think the work that will be described to you shortly will go a long way to curing or to certainly making those situations much better. We're looking at new lighting, new sidewalks, new crosswalks, hardscape improvements. We have our senior center, of course, at that location, a number of senior homes in that area. And I think the rehabilitation of that area would do wonders for that neighborhood, and really, again, one of the gateways into our community can be greatly improved. So the original introduction was made by actually Councilor Gould to Mr. Benevento, who's the president of World Tech Engineering. Some time ago we met to talk about some potential projects for the city of Peabody. Mr. Benevento, he'll talk a little bit about that. He's been doing major work across the state, most recently in Beverly, Everett, Watertown. There's a number of projects going on that they've been involved in. And he works to get us approved on the state Transportation Improvement Program, the state TIP, it's called, through the Mass Department of Transportation, which we can get funding, seek funding for certain roadways if we meet certain qualifications. And I'm very happy to report, I think all of you saw it, that we did, our application was deemed eligible for federal funding up to $10 million, just under $10 million. So certainly that would allow us to do major work in that area. And again, an important gateway, an important entryway into downtown Peabody, and just to continue, I think, the great work we've been doing in terms of safety and in terms of aesthetics. I don't want to say that we're going to be able to solve some of the traffic issues. That's something we've got to continue to work on. To me, this project is about safety, and this project is about aesthetics and just trying to make that area better for the residents, the seniors, and the motor vehicle operators in that area. So I wanted to introduce and have him come today to talk a little bit about the project, but also we need to make an investment and put forward the money in order to do the design work necessary to trigger that potential $10 million. And that's what we're here for today. So I wanted to have Mr. Benevento, Richard Benevento, come forward today, World Tech Engineering, and talk about the project, talk about a little bit of the process, and certainly he and I are here to answer any questions that you may have. Mr. Benevento.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors. This is a great opportunity for the city of Peabody. A lot of communities throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts take advantage of the State Transportation Improvement Program for projects like this, generally because cities and towns do not have the financial wherewithal to take on projects in the order of $10 million or more. We're involved with several projects, as the mayor mentioned. We're doing a project in Watertown, $16 million. We're doing a project in Everett, $20 million. They're all state transportation improvement projects. Let me talk a little bit about how we got here and where we are. Mass DOT has a process in which cities and towns prepare a project notification form, essentially informing Mass DOT that they have a project that they would like to have considered for funding. That is submitted to their district office, it's reviewed, and then they come back and they say, okay, we are now looking for more information. We need you to submit a project information form, which is a packet of material. And it includes all sorts of information. That includes traffic data, physical issues with the geometry of the road, condition of the roadway surface, Issues such as environmental justice. Is this in an environmental justice area, which essentially is minority and low income and that sort of thing? And they look at all of this, and it goes to the Project Review Committee, which is made up of all the district highway directors, folks in the chief engineer's office, and people at Mass DOT that evaluate these projects and decide whether they're eligible for state and federal funding. Peabody scored, the Central Street project scored the highest score of all the projects that came into District 4. So there's no question that this project is needed, it's long overdue, and it received the support of Mass DOT. After the Project Review Committee approved it, the Mayor's office received a letter from Mass DOT saying, "We're happy to inform you the project has been deemed eligible for state and federal funding." What does that mean? That 100% of the construction is funded by the federal government, 80%, and 20% comes from the state. So there's no dollars that come from the city of Peabody to pay for the construction of this project. It's 100% funded. Now, there is an obligation on the city to do the design. You're responsible for the design of the project, you're responsible for the right-of-way, and you're responsible for any environmental permitting. Fortunately, in this case, there is not a lot of environmental permitting on Central Street. We don't have a lot of wetland areas and things of that nature, so that won't be too difficult to overcome. The right-of-way, we anticipate that the project will be able to be constructed within the current right-of-way. However, projects like this oftentimes require temporary construction easements or rights of entry so that the contractor can do the work on the street. Projects like this, generally, the design of projects like this is generally somewhere in the order of 10 to 12% of the construction cost. And I'll back up for a second just in terms of our success with this project and getting the funding. We had requested $8.4 million. Unfortunately, we did not get $8.4 million. They gave us $9.6 million. So I think when we were in the mayor's office the day his chief of staff said, "Do they usually do that?" And they don't, but they have also added to the project various aspects that Mass DOT has to include. For example, all the construction engineering. So the city does not have to provide a clerk of the works. Mass DOT provides the clerk of the works. So that obviously elevates the project value. As I said, the design is typically 10 to 12% of the construction cost. So let's just use round numbers. Let's say it's a $10 million project. Ideally, the design would be somewhere in the order of $1 million to $1.2 million when all is said and done. This particular project, we are estimating about 10.5% of the construction cost. Now, when we do that, we don't do the whole design right off the bat, because there's key milestones within the project, and one is the 25% preliminary design. That is generally about 50 to 60% of the project effort, as well as the design fee. So the preliminary design will bring us right up through the Mass DOT official design public hearing. At that point, the horizontal and vertical geometry are defined. We've had a series, at that point, we've had a series of public information meetings, even prior to Mass DOT's official public hearing. And once we get through the public hearing, then we're off to the races just with the final design and advancing the project to construction. The project is advertised for construction, and all of the bidding and so forth is handled by Mass DOT. Essentially, the city is preparing its design to hand to Mass DOT for them to build. And that's how this process works. Once the project is in construction, the city will obviously have input at pre-construction meetings and progress meetings and things like that, but it's really nothing for the city to do at that point. The other nice thing about it being a city design is that although the city has to comply with Mass DOT design guidelines, it still becomes a city design. So Central Street, as a gateway roadway into the city, we will be able to do a lot of things on that roadway in addition to safety, because safety is always paramount, but also accommodating pedestrians, accommodating other modes of transportation. The city has an adopted complete streets policy. We're required to follow the provisions of your complete street policy, so we'll be accommodating bicycles, pedestrians, transit, all of those things. The other important aspect of the project is that the project is right near your senior center, so we want to make sure that we're accommodating that as well. As I mentioned, it's in an environmental justice area. That got the attention of Mass DOT as well, because they're trying to do projects that accommodate not just affluent communities, but communities that have minorities and low-income areas as well. So as I said, it's scored very, very high. Right now, the Boston Metropolitan Planning Organization, you may have heard of the Boston MPO, is evaluating projects for placement on the Transportation Improvement Program. Although the project has been approved by the Project Review Committee as eligible for funding, the city still has to ensure that the project is advancing and that the project is included in the State Transportation Improvement Program. The Boston MPO is the one that does that, but this project has already received high scores. And as a matter of fact, we were on the phone yesterday with your city engineer, Will Politz, and we're actually, even though we have high scores, we're looking at those areas where we can actually get more points. And we probably figure we have another 8 to 10 points that we can add to the score that we have already. So our job at WorldTech, in addition to doing the design, is to advocate for the city and make sure that the project is advancing and that we're getting the attention of the MPO so that when the project is ready for construction, we're programmed. We're in a programmed year. I don't know if I'm kind of going on, and I could probably be here right through tomorrow morning, but I just wanted to give you sort of a broad brush as to how the process works and what's going on with it. So with that, I'll just field some questions, and I'm sure that'll get me rambling again. So,
Councilor Gould. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Benevento, thank you for being here. We're excited. When you say eligible and that it's moving forward, is there a chance that it doesn't move forward?
So I've been doing this over 30 years. Any project that has ever received Project Review Committee approval, to my knowledge, every project's been built. Now, some have taken many, many years to do. And because of that, Mass DOT now has a process. If the project is programmed, they have a certain period of time to go through the reviews and advance the project through the design process. Typically, if a project dies, it's because of either A, public opposition, or because there was some environmental issue, or it's usually community-related that the project dies, not because Mass DOT or the MPO won't fund it.
Thank you. If we move forward and okay the design, ballpark, when is the time frame that the shovel hits the road? When is the first?
I would say somewhere in the order of 3 to 4 years.
Years for it to get started.
Well, the design, so the preliminary design will take about a year because there's a lot of public input. We have a lot of public information meetings. We want to hear from the public. Once we get past the design public hearing, it's probably another year after that. And then it's a question of advancing it through the MPO process. So we may, let's say, for example, we get on the 2021 tip, all right? And the 2021 tip goes from October 1st of 2020. Did I say 21? 2020 to September 30th of the following year. If the project's ready and we have a right-of-way certificate and we have an order of conditions, we try to advance that. Now, every year at the MPO meetings, I don't know if any of you have ever attended those, there are always projects that are held up for one reason or another, and the MPO is looking for projects that they can move up, because with federal funding, if you don't spend it, you lose it. So they want to make sure that they have a robust program going. So in terms of the design, we can advance the design and we can advance it through the review process. But again, it's a lot of it is the public process that can, and I'm not going to say slow it down, but you need to do that. You need to have public input on the project. This is a main roadway within the city of Peabody, and we want to make sure that it's tailored to the needs of the community.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I know how excited we are about this advancing. It is an opportunity to redo that whole section. Mr. Benevento, is Wilson Square specifically involved in that redesign?
Yes, I actually brought locust maps that I will leave with you so that you can see it. But essentially, the project goes from Walnut Street all the way up through past Tremont, past senior housing, up to and including Wilson Square. It'll extend up towards Pulaski Street, and it'll extend up towards Gardner Street. To the west, it will stop short of the bridge on 114, because that becomes state highway at the bridge.
Sorry, and will it incorporate some of Endicott Street to the left? Pulaski goes.
All of the approach streets, typically we include the approaches to all of those streets, and generally we'll go either 50 to 100 feet up each one of those streets on the approach streets. I think the total project length is about 5,300 linear feet, just over a mile. And the approach streets, so for example, at Tremont, we'll probably go up around 300 feet up Tremont Street because that'll be a signalized intersection. At least right now, it looks like that's what it will be.
From
Just to echo some of the what the mayor was talking about in terms of the improvements, this is a full reconstruction of this roadway. Sidewalks, curbing, roadway, drainage, landscaping, signalization. It's a complete reconstruction of the roadway, and it'll be a gateway, certainly a gateway project for the city.
I am so thrilled because I travel this road 10 times a day, and I can't tell you how exciting it is. And I know Council Mitsoulas feels the same way. It's going to redo the main thoroughfare for his ward. So thank you, Mr. Benevento, and Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
And if I could just briefly, an important component of this is accessibility, making sure that those seniors that live in the area have the ability to get where they need to go. So that's an integral part of this. And we did have a community meeting. I know, Council, you were there. A number of councilors, Council Mitsoulas and others attended that meeting. I think Council Melville. And it was very well received by the residents that were there. I would say probably we had maybe 50 to 75 residents at the, Council McGinn, I remember you being there. And I know it was very well received. So there's going to be a number of community meetings to get input. I'm sure a number of people are going to, state their opinions, and we want to hear that before there's a final review. And that's why we wanted to jump on this. We just got the letter a couple of weeks ago, and I really wanted to move on this to show that Peabody is serious, that we're ready to move forward, and hopefully move up that timeline just a bit. And that's why we wanted to come forward, seek the funding for the 25% design, so that we could show that we're ready to go and begin the work in earnest and get moving on this project. I think it's transformational for the city.
Just one thing to add to what the mayor's saying is I do work in a lot of communities, and some communities I've been working in for over 25 years, and they utilize this federal process very well. For example, Watertown, we've probably secured about $80 million for the town of Watertown because they continue to put one project in after the other. The mayor and I have also been talking about taking high-hazard intersections and highway safety improvement program intersections within the city of Peabody and doing funding requests for those as well. Different pot of money, it's federal money, but it's money that's out there, and Mass DOT is particularly interested in improving high-hazard intersections and intersections that have high crash rates and are dangerous to pedestrians. So the process to perpetuate this process is a win-win, obviously, because it's bringing more federal dollars to the city, but it's also at the same time improving deficiencies in your transportation infrastructure. So good stuff.
The esteemed Councilman Mitsoulas, please.
Thank you very much. I spoke with the mayor on this before. The mayor filled me in on what was going on, and I'm glad he did because I was getting feedback that just wasn't true. And I explained it to the mayor. We thought this was going to be solve a few of the traffic problems, and it's got nothing to do with the traffic problem, and I think that the mayor made that clear tonight. This is an aesthetic issue and a safety issue for the residents in the neighborhood. I support this 1,000%, especially with the elderly people we have in the neighborhood. If you pick up the police log, you'll always see there's an accident on Central Street. It happens almost once or twice a week. I've been involved in one myself, so I know that we'll make it a lot safer. And I just wanted to touch on one thing here because I think most of this council knows me and knows that someday we're going to do something about the traffic problem in this city. And when you say that you either use it or lose it. I remember back when they were talking about building the connector road, which I believe would have solved the traffic problem in this city. But what happened was the money was there, it was funded by the federal government. We didn't use it and we lost it. It built the connector road in Marlborough, Mass, and we lost out severely. So I'm just telling you, Mayor, that we're behind you on this. Let's clean up, make that area safer. And just one of the time limit was a little confusing to me. Let's assume all the paperwork and all the permits and everything. We got the word to go. Let's start today. If we started it today, how long would it be? Is this a 1 year, 2 years?
I'd say 2 to 3 years to
2
get
to
through the
3
design
years.
process. Because, I mean, this is a major project.
Yeah.
Wilson Square all by itself
Right.
could be a project.
Right.
So there's a lot to do. There's a lot of analysis and design and public input. And of course, on top of that, when these designs go to Mass DOT for review, it's not one person looking at it. It goes to Boston, and there's probably 5 or 6 departments in Boston that look at it.
Right.
And then it goes to the district office in Arlington, and there's probably another 5 or 6 departments that are looking at it there, and they all comment on it. And then we have to address those comments, and then we have a comment resolution meeting, and once all of the comments have been addressed and Mass DOT's happy, we schedule the public hearing. So there's a process.
Yeah.
We have a pretty good track record of advancing these projects and not letting them bog down. I mean, if necessary, sometimes we'll make a phone call and ask where are the comments, how are we doing on the comments. But you know, if they see that the city, as the mayor said, if they see this, if the city is committed to the project and they're serious about it and they're advancing it, you'll be like a lot of these other communities that we drive through all the time, and we always see, gee, they're always redoing a street in this town. And that is because they're aggressive and have a robust program. So that's what we want to do here in Peabody, same thing.
Right. Well,
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I went to the meeting last summer regarding this, and it was very well received. Councilman Sulis and the mayor had mentioned as well. One thing, I went through the contract. I just want to make sure, because the biggest point of contention from folks at that was the mitigation during construction, that will be reviewed and be part of the public access, because that is as you've mentioned a couple of times, a main artery coming into the city, Christmas time from the mall and all that is a area that there's bottlenecks after bottleneck, and it's 2 lane to 1 lane and speed limits and everything. And there's senior housing along that as well, along with people's homes and arterieways to schools. So that would be part of it, correct?
So as we go through the design process, one of the aspects of the final design, and by the way, you heard me say 25% preliminary design, then it goes to 75% design, then it goes 100% design, and then the final submission is PS&E, plan specs and estimates. When we get into the 75% design phase, one of the requirements of the project is traffic management during construction.
Okay.
So there are construction phasing plans, there are certain details in terms of if they have to do a lane closure. On a roadway like this, they would have to maintain bi-directional traffic at all times because it's a main thoroughfare within the community. Even more important than that is you have to get emergency vehicles through there. We know that there's fire station in the square and the senior housing on the roadway. So that's all part of the process. And then once the project goes out to construction, out to bid, and Mass DOT selects a contractor, at the pre-construction meeting, this is all discussed yet again. And I suspect that the public services director and the city engineer and perhaps the mayor himself may be at that meeting to express some of the concerns during construction. But those are all, that's a big, big thing for Mass DOT. What they don't want to do is be getting a lot of phone calls in Arlington saying, you know, gee, the road stopped. They just did Rantoul Street in Peabody. That was a $22 million project. We didn't do the design, but I did write the funding request for that in 1991. Yes, that was quite a while ago. And the project morphed over the years, but that was a major project right on 1A right through downtown Beverly, and it worked out very well. There are times when there may be just some disruptions, but the contractor and the resident engineer have to make sure that those notices get out. Today with social media and TV and that sort of thing, that kind of information get out a lot easier.
Thank you.
Councilor Sasslaw.
Thank you. Chairman. I just want to change gears for a second. I just had a quick question of the mayor on the traffic signal asset management study. I've read it. It looks like we're, doing some preventive work. I just want to, we haven't done it since 2006, and just why now? And I think it's good, but I'm just curious why now and how it came out.
One, I think it's the right time for it. I think all of us in the different wards across the city, all the at-large councils know there's a number of intersections that need some work, that need some improvements to be made. I can think of a couple right off the top of my head at King Street and Lowell Street, over at Allen's Lane and Washington Street, a number of 5 corners. There's a number of ones that I think can be improved. So I thought it was a good time to do an inventory, but also I was prompted by the fact that I do want to look forward. If we're successful here with Central Street, I do want to have some other potential projects in the pipeline. If we're successful here, which is looking very promising, and we've put forward a good project, and the state knows that Peabody is serious about making improvements. I want to have others that are potentially ready to go. So I think in the short term, we can make some assessments of some of the dangerous or some of the intersections that need assistance, even if it's simply tweaking the light sequencing, which I think would help in some of the intersections, but also to set up potential projects in the future. So I just thought it was the right time. With this effort now and Central Street being the first, there could be some other projects in the future.
Thank you. I'm all set. Thank you.
Councilman McGinn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A sizable portion of this is in Ward 2, although the vast majority is in Ward 3. And like Councilor Matsoulis, I am very excited about this project and fully supportive. Mayor and other councils have mentioned the public meeting that took place back in June, I think it was. It was very well attended. I've been contacted a number of times recently because of all the publicity this has been getting, thanks to the mayor. So many public comments on this, which is great. So I think there's going to be a real appetite for residents and business owners and so forth to have their opinions known through this process. So I'm glad to hear there's going to be so much public meeting and input, opportunities for input throughout the front end of this. And Mr. Chairman, if there are no others, I'd be ready to make a motion.
I'll give you that in one moment. I was going to ask you to make it anyway. But I just wanted to add to what was being said here tonight, if there's no other comments. There was a mention of risk, the possibility that you put the money in the study and you don't get the funding. Every time I hear that, I think back to many lives ago, a high school that we might never get reimbursed for in the following year, and we didn't do it in the following year. Not only did they, 2 years later, did they reimburse, but they reimbursed at an accelerated rate. So instead of getting the money over a 10-year period, you got it over a 5-year period, and it was incredible. And interest rates were low, and the money was there to be had, and we didn't take advantage of it. A project like this is you get so few bites at the apple, and this is a big bite of an apple. And I mean, you think, how many $10 million grants does this city get? Not many. And, to get ourselves in line to pick up $10 million to do a big swath of land, when you think about how that compares to, that's 8 years worth of our Chapter 90. 8 years. And that Chapter 90 money can then be used for other things, other areas within the various wards and the multiple streets. So I think this is a great opportunity. Yeah, there's a minuscule risk or a small risk, but you know what? If we don't get the grant, we need to do the work anyway. So at some point in time, none of the work that we're doing is going to go for naught. So I encourage my fellow councilors to support this. It's a great use for our unreserved fund balance, and I hope this passes with flying colors. Councilman McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move to transfer $474,700 from the unreserved fund balance free cash account to Central Street Design in the amount of $474,700. So moved.
On the motion, any questions, any comments? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilors McGinn,
Yeah.
Gould,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Counsel McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to approve the transfer from the budget reserve account in the amount of $42,800 to the traffic signal asset management study account in the amount of $42,800. So moved.
Councilors, you've heard the motion. Any remarks? Questions? None? Roll call.
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
Gravel. Yes. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, councilors.
Councilors, there was another item on the agenda this evening, which was a motion that was brought forth by Council Manning Martin. Basically, it was to learn more about the small commercial exemption. Given that Council Manning Martin is unable to attend this evening, I think as a courtesy to her, I've also talked to the assessors, I would like to defer that discussion until the next Finance Committee meeting, which, as you know, there's a regular slew of those. So if there are no objections, I will defer.
So moved.
Seeing none, all in favor, any opposed, it's a vote. Thank you very much. Motion to adjourn. Thank you, Council Turco.